Hey, you there. If you're tuning into this video, first of all, you are awesome. And secondly, if you're tuning into this video, you're probably interested in this incredibly awesome 1973 Topps card of Ellie Rodriguez. When I was a kid and I first started going to Milwaukee Brewers games, Ellie Rodriguez immediately became one of my favorite players because of his dynamic style and his great hustle on the field. So when I bought a pack of cards and I got this Ellie Rodriguez card in a pack, I thought that was just great. What a great picture of one of my favorite players for the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, I was very downhearted when I heard that this card was labeled as an uncorrected error or a UER card, indicating that this was not actually Ellie Rodriguez, that it was some other catcher, and many claim that it's catcher Paul Ratliff instead. Now, I think it's Ellie Rodriguez, and that's what I'm going to prove in this video here. First of all, it does rather look like him with the mop top hairstyle and the fact that he's a somewhat shorter player. He was under 6 feet tall, whereas the other Brewers catchers, John Felsky and Paul Ratliff, were 6'2", 6'3", much taller players, not under 6 feet as Ellie Rodriguez does appear to be here. So first of all, what do we know? We know that this card is from a day game. We knew that it came from the 1972 season. And we knew that it's in County Stadium, Milwaukee, a home game. We can't tell who the opponent is from this picture, but I think we're going to establish some things in here. And it appears to be occurring someplace in the interior of the infield, somewhere in front of home plate, between home plate and the pitcher's mound, and it appears to be on the first base side. And what we do see here is we see a pitcher who has a number with a 2 in it, which could have been either Bill Parsons, number 52, or Skip Lockwood, number 42. And the player behind him with a glove appears to be George Scott, the first baseman. However, is it actually Ellie Rodriguez? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the approach that Topps had a tendency to take several of these action pictures all in the same game. So I'm going to kind of look at several cards that I believe are going to make my case in terms of demonstrating that this actually is Ellie Rodriguez. So let's first of all look at this card of Ray Newman. Okay, well, what does Ray Newman have to do with Ellie Rodriguez being in the previous picture there? Well, Ray Newman only played 4 games with the Brewers in 1972. And in fact, only 3 of those games were in County Stadium. And in fact, only 2 of those games at County Stadium were actually day games. June 17th against Kansas City and June 25th in Boston. So let's look at a couple of other details. First of all, we see Johnny Briggs out in left field, and we look for maybe some clues in the crowd. And one clue that I can see is we do see in the upper left-hand corner a rather large fan wearing black sitting out there in the bleachers. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Let's take a look at another card. Okay, we have from the same set the Paul Splitoff card. Now, Paul Splitoff, the Kansas City pitcher, again appears to be playing in County Stadium. You see the similarity in the field with the outfield wall. And we also seem to notice that same rather large fan in the crowd in the upper left wearing the black. Now, Paul Splitoff only played 2 games in County Stadium and 1 day game. And in fact, that 1 game was June 17th versus Milwaukee. There's June 17th again. And so the similarity in the pictures, it does appear that both Ray Newman and Paul Splittorff played this game in County Stadium on June 17th of 1972. Okay, what does this have to do with the Ellie Rodriguez card? Well, we're going to see. And again, remember that Topps did have this tendency of taking several picture cards from the same game during the 1972 season. Now we get to the next one. Bill Parsons. Here's an action shot showing Bill Parsons in mid-pitch. Now, Bill Parsons, of course, made many appearances in County Stadium that year. However, we do notice that this is, again, another day game. And we do see another clue. We notice that in the background, we have number 16, the second baseman for the Milwaukee Brewers, Ron Thiebold. Now, there were a total of 6 day games at County Stadium that featured both Bill Parsons as pitcher and Ron Thiebold as the second baseman. We have April 22nd against Detroit, June 3rd against Texas, June 17th against Kansas City. There we go. There's June 17th again. June 25th against Boston, August 5th against New York, August 27th against Chicago. Now, this doesn't definitively narrow anything down. We've got it down to 1 of 6 possible games. But then again, there is that June 17th again, where we know that Ray Newman and Paul Splittorff were the other pitchers in the game. Also, another detail that we're going to come back to is notice in the upper right, you have this large billboard with a beer mug on it. Keep that in mind for when we come back to it later, because that's going to give us a little bit of a view on the perspective of where these photos are being taken for these cards. Okay, another game that was taken at County Stadium that year, we find the Ed Kirkpatrick card. Now, Ed Kirkpatrick played 5 games at County Stadium, and in fact, again, 2 day games. And what's our clue? Well, there's Johnny Briggs of the Milwaukee Brewers in his home uniform there, right behind Kirkpatrick. And the 2 day games that Ed Kirkpatrick played, again, were June 17th, and then the following day, June 18th in Milwaukee. And in this picture, it does appear that Johnny Briggs must have just hit a pop fly that Ed Kirkpatrick is peering up at. All right, let's look at our next clue. We now have the Amos Otis card. Again, a card shown in County Stadium, and then there's the Milwaukee Brewers catcher, Brewers uniform in his home uniform, to illustrate another game being played at County Stadium in 1972. Again, Amos Otis played 6 games in County Stadium that year, but like Kirkpatrick, only 2 of them were day games. And again, same dates, June 17th and June 18th. But here is one of our most important clues. Who is the catcher for Milwaukee? We notice that the number on his back appears to be the number 6. Who was number 6 for the Milwaukee Brewers? Well, that was Ellie Rodriguez. So this game would have been from either June 17th or June 18th. And given again that we've shown that Newman and Splittorff were present at the June 17th game, it's likely that all 5 of these photos so far were from this game of June 17th, 1972. And this brings us to the actual Ellie Rodriguez card. Again, we picture 3 players. It looks like either Bill Parsons or possibly Skip Lockwood, George Scott, umpire, with the catcher, who I believe is Ellie Rodriguez. But before I go on and say more about this card itself, let's dispel the rumor once and for all that this is Paul Ratliff. This is not Paul Ratliff in the photo. First of all, if it is Bill Parsons in the photo, number 52, which games were Parsons and Ratliff in a home game during the day during the 1972 season? Well, there were only three of them where the two of them were in the same box score. You have April 26th against California. In that game, Ratliff only appeared as a pinch hitter. He was not the catcher for the game. We have June 3rd versus Texas, where Parsons was pitching and Ratliff was catching. However, in that game, George Scott played third base for almost the entire game. In fact, he played third base for the first 8 innings and only appeared at first base for the final inning. In which case, if there was a photo that showed Parsons, Ratliff, and George Scott, with George Scott appearing to be on the first base side of the plate, that must have happened in the 9th inning. And in that 9th inning, the 9th inning consisted of 2 strikeouts by Texas, a base hit, and a deep fly ball that ended the game. Very unlikely that you would have had a play in the interior of the infield in just that 9th inning of the June 3rd game. And then the third possibility was July 16th versus Boston. Parsons was pitching with Ratliff catching, but that was the back half of the doubleheader. So it likely that dusk would be falling at that time, so you wouldn't have the bright sunlight on the game at that time. So it is extraordinarily unlikely that this was Parsons and Ratliff in the same photograph. However, there are some people that believe that the pitcher might have been Skip Lockwood, number 42. So let's look at those possibilities. Okay, what were the games that Skip Lockwood and Paul Ratliff were in day home games in Milwaukee? Well, we have a June 4th game against Texas, where Skip Lockwood was the starting pitcher with Paul Ratliff as the catcher. Lockwood was knocked out in the first inning of this game after a series of base hits and a couple of outs here and there. Lockwood was gone. So if a photo that featured Skip Lockwood, Paul Ratliff, and George Scott in the photo would have had to have happened in this first 2/3 of an inning. Again, very unlikely that that would have occurred. June 22nd, Lockwood and Ratliff were both in the box score, but in this game, Ratliff appeared only as a pinch hitter, not catching. And then July 16th versus Boston, that same game that we talked about on the last page there, the back half of a doubleheader. Again, the same game with Parsons pitching and Ratliff catching, but Skip Lockwood only appeared in this game as a pinch runner. So if this photo were to feature Lockwood, George Scott, and Ratliff, it would have to have been in that early part of the first inning in that one game on June 4th. Highly unlikely that that would have occurred. So narrowing it down, it does look like there's very strong evidence that these 6 photos, and in particular the Ellie Rodriguez photo, came from the game on June 17th of 1972. So let's go ahead and go to Baseball Reference and look up the information on this game. So you see we have the game June 17th, 1972. And as we can tell, it is a daytime game, June 17th, 1972, at home in Milwaukee. Kansas City ended up winning that game 6-3. And let's take a look at the rest of the box score. Okay, let's take a look at the lineup for the Kansas City Royals. Okay, there we have three of our players from our cards, Amos Otis, Ed Kirkpatrick at catcher, and Paul Splittorff pitching. Okay, all consistent so far. And then we look at the lineup for the Milwaukee Brewers. All right, each of our key players here, including the players that were in the backgrounds of the cards. We have Ron Thiebold playing second base, George Scott at first base. We even have Johnny Briggs in left field, as we would expect. Ellie Rodriguez, the catcher. And there we have Bill Parsons, the starting pitcher, and Ray Newman in relief. So far, all 10 of the players that have appeared in our card as either main players or as background players, they are all in the lineup for this game on June 17th, 1972. And in fact, if we look at the pitching line, Paul Splittorff, the starting pitcher for Kansas City with a complete game. Bill Parsons, the starting pitcher for Milwaukee. And Ray Newman coming to pitch the ninth inning for Milwaukee. Again, all June 17th, 1972. There also is one other thing that's rather interesting of note shown on this page. We get the name of the home plate umpire. Home plate umpire being George Maloney. Could he be the umpire in that picture? Likely so, as we take a look at it. Now, here is where the information does get very interesting. We're going to go to the baseball reference listing here and look at the play-by-play for this game. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct your attention to the third and fourth innings. Okay, we have the third inning and the fourth inning of this particular game. Let's look at an event that occurred here in the fourth inning. Milwaukee batting, Johnny Briggs. The result of the play, a foul pop fly to the catcher. Does that there look like what's occurring in the card of Ed Kirkpatrick? Johnny Briggs in the photo hitting a pop fly. Maybe looking toward first base, but not running because he knows that it's a foul ball. And Ed Kirkpatrick looking to the sky to catch the ball and put Johnny Briggs out on the play. Okay, now we're going to take you to the third inning of this game. And again, here's where things get very interesting and actually appear to solve our problem as to who's in the photograph of the Ellie Rodriguez card. Here we are. Top of the third. Bill Parsons pitching. Paul Splittorff, the batter for Kansas City. Two players are on in first and second base. Paul Splittorff bunts. The bunt is a ground out. And the ground out occurs at first base. Catcher to the second baseman. But it's an out at first base. You see, it's a sacrifice. Cookie Rojas goes from second base to third, and Ron Hansen goes from first base to second base. But the catcher throws to the second baseman as an out at first. Is that what happened in the Ellie Rodriguez card? Again, June 17th, all the pieces are coming into place. So here we have it. Paul Splittorff has just bunted in the interior of the infield on the first base side. Again, note the positioning of the billboard for Miller time. Notice that we're a little further to the right, showing that we're on the first base side of the pitcher's mound. The pitcher, Bill Parsons, comes off the plate and George Scott moves in. The three players converge upon the bunt. Ellie Rodriguez picks up the bunt and throws to the second baseman, Ron Thiebold, covering at first base, to put out the bunter, Paul Splittorff, at first base. So here we have it. The Ellie Rodriguez card is a photo from the third inning of the game between the Milwaukee Brewers and the Kansas City Royals on June 17th, 1972. So this is Ellie Rodriguez in the photo. So we can all ask Beckett and all of our other sources, they have this listed as an uncorrected error card, that they can remove the UER designation from this card and indicate that this card is a correct photo. So thanks for watching. And remember, not only is this an awesome card, and the 1973 set is an awesome set, you are awesome as well.